Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, Chinese film productions contributed to over half of China's $8.6 billion box office in 2017. So how did domestic films encourage moviegoers to turn out in droves? I speak to artist, vocalist, and author Liu Sola, who tries to experiment with different cultures in her ongoing world tours. I learned how her many creative outlets freed her artistic spirit inside China and beyond. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. China's box office revenues surged in 2017 as the world's second largest movie market edged closer to overtaking the United States. After a sharp slowdown in 2016, China's ticket revenue more than tripled to $8.6 billion. So we can see that 2017 outperformed expectations. How can China learn from these results and capitalize on these successes?
For China's booming film industry, box office revenue rose more than 13% in 2017. The industry generated nearly 56 billion yuan, equivalent to more than $8 billion. Domestic films contributed more than 50% of the market. Chinese blockbuster Wolf Warriors 2 topped the list and became the country's highest-grossing film ever, raking in around 5.7 billion yuan in ticket sales. 4 other local films made it to the top 10 list, among them Never Say Die, Kung Fu Yoga, Journey to the West, The Demons Strike Back, and Youth.
I'm
taking you down, Toretto. Let's play.
The Fate of the Furious was the top-grossing foreign film, ranking second on the top 10 list. 22, featuring the stories of 22 comfort women, became the first Chinese documentary to surpass 100 million yuan at the box office.
I think Chinese movies not only posted quantitative growth, but also opened a whole new dynamic and established a relatively sound mechanism. Both their industrial output and cultural content showed a new look.
9,597 new screens installed in 2017, China's cinema screens now number a record 50,776.
The Chinese movies can grow in strength little by little. Therefore, we should cherish this opportunity and allow different people to make different movies.
China's movie industry has shifted from being profit-driven to pursuing quality. Movies in the past had been produced to earn a quick buck, but became box office flops. This led to a shakedown in the business, which has since improved the domestic movie industry and brought it back to sound and stable development. China's film industry in 2018 will aim to build upon last year's vitality.
For more on China's domestic film industry developments in 2017, we are joined in our Beijing studio Benji, who is a producer and also former executive at Warner Brothers and Disney. Welcome.
Thank
Long
you.
time no see.
Yeah.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy to be back.
Well, great to have you, sir. And also joining us here in Beijing, Teng Jimeng, a freelance movie critic and also cultural commentator. Mr. Teng, welcome as well. This year, the number is gigantic compared to previous times. Chinese moviegoers are just more interested in films, or actually we are having more free time to spend in the theaters? Ben?
Well, the number looks very optimistic. It's a big increase compared to last year.
Yeah.
But actually, I still see this year as a continued slow growth of the market.
Explain.
Because this year is the first year that we start to include the online transaction fee as part of the box office.
I see.
So if we subtract this online transaction fee, which will be like, I think it's 30 million something, right, in the RMB. So if we subtract this number, the growth will not be that kind of ideal. So it's still a very slow growth compared to last year.
I see.
Yeah.
Some say Whether this is a fair competition is also a big question mark because the domestic movies, the international movies, or so-called imported movies are actually treated very differently when it comes to box office times, all of these possibilities, what theaters, all of these. So, Professor Tang, do you think we are making progress domestic movies?
Well, absolutely. I think the progress is out there is very conspicuous. We are turning out real quality films, right? Both in terms of production values and also storylines, characterization, and also great artists. I mean, if you take, for example, this Wolf Warrior and also Youth, for example, both of these films are actually standing out because of the great storyline, great messages, and also production, professionalism on the part of
For our viewers
producers.
Internationally, maybe they do not know necessarily exactly what these two movies are about. First movie, Wolf Warrior 2. Is really leading the box office.
Chinese superheroes.
Superheroes, exactly.
Fighting a foreign enemy, saving Chinese people overseas.
Saving the world, baby.
Even saving the people in Africa.
That's right, that's right.
So that really shows the rise of China power.
Yes.
So I think Chinese audience can relate to this kind of theme. So I think it's part of the reasons why this movie is so successful in China.
A lot of nationalism also involved, some say.
Patriotic. Kind of
the patriotism, I think.
Patriotism.
Another
movie which is called Youth. I hope we have some clips to play on these movies. It's also about patriotism, but it's in a very different time, and it's more about a reminiscence of the past, the history. Actually involves a story of the Sino-Vietnamese War.
Yes. Well, once again, that's a Feng Xiaogang film, and I would call him the China's Steven Spielberg. I mean, very sentimental, very prolific, and very virtuoso in terms of reflecting upon a particular historical context. And for example, Youth, Fang Hua, is a film about the coming age of the generation born in the 1960s, spent their formative years in the 1970s, and also growing up maturely in the 1980s and 1990s. The film actually touches upon the Cultural Revolution, the very tail end perhaps, and also the early years of Chinese reform, and most tragically, the bloody war in between China and Vietnam.
And the disarmament of the PLA, a big chunk of it. In fact, the 1 million strong was disarmed. This is part of history that has not been dealt with much, you see, in the past, particularly in Chinese movies, except those that really nationalistic and patriotic movies. So why do these movies is making such a echo among the audience? One is absolutely action movie. Hollywood type, Chinese patriotism. The other also patriotism, but very reminiscent of the history and sometimes even a little bit critical of the history. Why are they become successful all at the same time?
Well, for me, I think for Wolf Warrior 2, first, I mean, the reasons for their success, first, we have mentioned that they have this patriotism, right? People can relate to that, China power, rise of China's power. The other thing is, it's a perfect example of what we call the heavy industry movie making, movie production. It there's a great investment in the movie. We can see from the visual effect, and from all this action sequence, the fighting scenes, Chinese superhero, fighting under the water, in the sky, using fighter planes, battleships, even tanks. So people are like, wow, it's like a Chinese audience never saw this kind of, big budget, special effect in Chinese movie. So this is, there's a great production value for Chinese audience.
And for youth, it's a different story.
It's a different one. I think, once again, like Ben said, it's the first film, I think, that tackles so deeply into this rising China as a superpower, perhaps as a just power. I mean, out there saving the Chinese nationals, saving the Africans, and saving the world, perhaps. We are, for the first time, being a force of justice.
Yes.
I mean, back in the past, it's always Hollywood playing that role.
But the movie Youth is a different story, you think?
Youth is very, very different. I think Youth is a very great piece of nostalgia, and Youth is also a piece of looking back into China's tragic history and try to coming to peace with that history. It's about the loss of innocence and also the regaining of useful innocence back in the 1990s after this very tragic thing.
If these two movies are dealing with so-called big topics, as both of you just illustrated, what about the other movies? We see some very interesting phenomenon this year.
That's right.
Small budget art house movies. Documentaries like 22, which is about comfort women in China, and also things like 嘉年华, you know, Angels in White.
Angels Wear White.
Yes, that's all small budget art house movie. Nobody expect them
That's right.
to be box office headers in a way, but they did that exactly.
That's why we call this year, I mean, 2017, the year of sleepers. A lot of black horse, success of small art house movies. I think it shows a kind of a trend that Chinese audience are starting to see a diversity of movies, not just the big Hollywood special effect action movies. They would like to see something different, and for this. And you mentioned Angels Wear White, Mr. No Problem, the black and white, a period movie, and like Path of Soul, Gang Ren Bo Qi, all the three, by Zhang Yang, small budget art house movies. They're different. They show a very different level of cinematic arts and skills, and also they have this deep thoughts and audacious reflection of the current social issues, spiritual life of Chinese people.
Many of the words that you just used, Ben, but if you think about that, 1 year ago, we are still talking about blockbuster movies. That's what the Chinese market needs, right? But a year later, it seems that the moviegoers are also really into the stories. They really want to see more than just the blockbusters. Can China just change like that dramatically when it comes to what the audience need?
It won't be changed overnight. I mean, what I mean is you cannot say that this high quality art house movies will be the main theme movies in Chinese market. It's not possible. Even in other parts of the world, there's still like, just for a marginal market. But we can see, as I said earlier, the diversity of the audience, diversity of Chinese movies. So that's a good trend.
Right. The other thing is, we used to talk about joint production. I mean, you yourself were involved in it, right? You were in many of those foreign movie companies. But now it seems that trend has gone. Once again, something just happened overnight and then gone. So this is not just about the content of the movies, like we talk about the small budget art house movies. It's also about the way of production.
That's right.
Now China just wants to make its own movies. It does not necessarily need to have a joint production with Hollywood, in which Hollywood get the money from China. So it's a very interesting phenomenon too.
Well, co-production used to be seen as a way to learn from Hollywood. It's all about knowledge transfer, right? From Hollywood into China, we borrow, we pay, and then, for example, we learn, we pay by paying, and they earn by teaching.
Right.
And so right now, I think that China
has that been achieved?
It has been achieved. I mean, look at Wolf Warrior. I mean, this is typical. It's almost like a copycat of
and
the
there's
Hollywood.
So many Hollywood talents are working in Chinese productions.
And now we have foreigners. I mean, if you look at, for example, if you look at The Farewell My Concubine back in 1993, it was basically a co-production film involving Taiwan, Hong Kong, mainland Chinese talents out there, like Leslie Chang out there, right, and Gong Li. I mean, both from Hong Kong and mainlander. Now I think China is much kind of mature film industry nation at this very point. And so it's not the end, but then our learning curve is still steep.
Right.
But at the same time, I think we are learning the craft, and we are quite trying to tell good stories about China. We have such a huge treasure house of good stories.
Right.
Why can't we tell the stories?
But I was thinking about this before we came into the studio. People have been talking about Chinese contemporary literature. Some readers, particularly ardent readers, complain that most of the literatures today are dealing with the past dynasties. They're not dealing with contemporary life. And many people wonder whether the movies, when they are trying to express certain messages, are also going to fall into the same trap, that it's all about the past, it's not about today. And will the audience be happy about that? Ben, I'm sure you are thinking about it because you're producing a movie right now.
Well, there's one theory, one saying, but by the business insiders and also audience that the moviegoers want to escape from the reality.
Really?
Because reality is so stark, so heavy.
Right.
Well, especially in China right now, even though it's it's booming economy, everybody's making money, it's getting rich, getting better life, but still life is hard, right?
Lots of anxieties out there.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, anxiety, pressure from life. So there's a trend. People want to get away from it, want to have a daydream when they go to see the movies. So that's part of the reason.
But it doesn't mean that they want to go back into the dynasties.
No, I mean, no,
Movie is an
absolutely.
escape for everybody at any time, right?
I mean, if you look at, we talk about this during our break, and for example, back in 2015, and I mean, it was a big drop back, right? I mean, kind of major setback in box office revenue, and it's because of too many fantasy films out there.
Yeah.
And
poor quality fantasy films.
Right? Trying to drag us back to this great dynasty like Tian and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I think indie filmmakers are actually making a new trend. I mean, like the director you interviewed, Geng Jun, for example, who made Free and Easy. That's a great film about China's reality. I mean, I'm all for these social reality films. I mean, even Feng Xiaogang's Youth is all about this reality. I mean, the changes that actually transformed China, and China eventually being changed by this very social realism thought.
Right.
Literature used to be doing that.
Yeah,
but now film is taking over.
You know, we talk about this at the very beginning. The number is gigantic, even though you could argue, you could analyze in different ways, but the number is gigantic.
Yeah.
But the question really is fundamentally, does a good number when it comes to box office really equals to better quality movies these days? Of course, up to interpretation what better quality we're talking about, but to you, does it mean that?
I don't think so, because even though we see this growing box office every year, but still we have a growing number of movie production every year. Last year there are about 700 movies produced in China, and there are only like 200 released in Chinese market. So 500 movies are gone. They're nowhere.
Where are they?
I don't know. They're like
TV
shelved.
channels, right?
Yeah,
In
TV channels,
right?
online maybe,
Online,
but
maybe.
not in theaters.
Right.
We can be sure of that.
Right.
So there's a big waste of money spent on movies. I mean, these numbers cannot be translated into box office. So if we see this 500 disappearing movies can have good quality, or at least average quality, we can see a bigger box office. So
there we go. The number does tell the story, right?
Exactly.
In a way. And Professor Tang, what do you think? Gigantic box office translate into qualities?
I tend to think yes. I think on the one hand, there's the great improvement of China's cinematic infrastructure. We are now actually #1 in terms of numbers of film screens.
Yes.
Right? Movie theaters
50,000.
environment has been greatly changed. Steering, sound, and all that kind of great equipment out there. 3D, 4D films.
That's right.
Now being in China in first-tier, second-tier cities. And so I see a great potential in terms of numbers reflecting this very change, this improvement. Also, thematically speaking, I think Chinese filmmakers are thinking. They're thinking, real thinking people, trying to reflect upon this reality of China, this changing China about, for example, individual lives.
Right.
Right, individual lives, the fate of the nation, and as well as China's international relationship with the rest of the nation. And I see this film being used as a soft power, trying to attract and trying to appeal and trying to persuade.
Well, I'm not sure whether every film director is thinking about soft power when they are trying to put their movies together. But for now, we want to thank the both of you for being with us and helping us understand the real essence behind the box office. Tang Jimeng, Ben Ji. Really appreciate it. Happy New Year to both of you
Happy
once
New
again.
Year.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year to you.
Thank you.
And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program, I speak to artist, vocalist, and author Liu Sola, who spreads Chinese culture in her ongoing world tours. I learn how her many creative outlets freed her artistic spirit inside China and even beyond.
China Global Television Network. From broadcast centers in Beijing, Washington, and Nairobi. A unique global perspective. 6 channels and a video content service. News when you want it and where you want it. On TV screens, websites, mobile platforms and social media. CGTN. See the difference.
We have come a long way. Changes happen, and fast, from all corners, different lives, voices, and visions. Encouraged to think, enlightened to change. World Insight with Tian Wei go beyond the headlines. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. She writes, she makes art, and she composes. She constantly challenges realities and the comfort zone. She is Liu Sola, a woman who wears many hats. Liu started in the 1980s as an author just a few years after China opened up to the outside world. Yet she was not satisfied in simply being a big name, but prefers to play with artistic genres. The goal, when you ask her, is simple: to be free-spirited. That's what makes her content as an artist. She has been touring around the world with longtime collaborators as Liu Sola and Friends Ensemble. There we go. I visited her home, which doubles as her studio in the suburbs of Beijing, and we started our conversation from 30 years ago. China was on its path of rapid development. I guess for you, as a young woman then, it must be a very different experience, as an artist too.
Yeah, it was really so much opportunities, but then there's lots of opportunity can be good and bad. Both, you know, like for me, I thought I didn't really care that much about all those opportunities coming, you know, throw you
like you.
Any young artist there, young people, that you get so many trends, like everything can throw to you from inside China, outside China that time. But you have to be careful. So I was very careful.
What were your standards then?
To be honest to myself, honest to people. If I continue something, even I'm not happy about it, I better just stop, not to lie to the audience.
Your work, for example, is really about yourself or about your friends. I mean, it is a story about the Chinese modern music group, you know, in a way. I just wonder how your friends reacted to your work. They probably could identify one or two of their own stories in it.
Most of it, they're very happy. And sometimes some they feel very like suspicious. What are you talking? What are you trying to do with us? Yeah.
At that time, Chinese modern music, if we use that phrase,
yes.
was pretty much similar to the 1940s America.
Not America, it's European. So we were repeating the 1940s modern music tradition. In China, the special thing about China is because we had many years isolated for music education. Our generation was really the most lucky generation in the conservatory, because at that time, conservatory teachers, they were very open, also really help us to develop our imagination. We get a lot of help from the teachers, and the library was open. We can go digging. Curiosity, my composer classmates, they all really very curiosity young composers. The good thing about them is that they want to create their own, own style based on who they are. They already have the conscious that who they are. Usually, for students, it takes a long time. You study the knowledge of music, study technical music, then after graduation, then you create your own style. But for us, it was like everything shrink in a few years. We have to immediately develop our own style, and at the same time, there's so many knowledge from outside. You grab it without actually too much judgment, just grab it in a few years, and then so much knowledge also about Chinese music, also about
everything together.
So it's hard for us actually to absorb and create at the same time. But I think some of them, they really did well.
And you did well too.
I did well after I graduated. For me, even the modern music was too established for me. By that time, that's what I feel, instinctively I feel, because anything established, I have questions. I think that time I was young, I was rebellious, I was living in the time, the moment. I loved rock and roll.
That is well known.
Yeah. I feel rock and roll was more like fits my personality, fits what I want to say.
Better than the modern music.
Modern music was too old for me that time. Even there was a new for Chinese composer, but still I feel too old for me. Immediately after graduation, I switched to rock and roll.
Do you still like that music when you
it's over. It's over for me.
It's over.
It's over. It's old.
Why? Why is it old for you? Why is it old for you?
After I went to England, I found that it's too old. I really was mixed with British rock and roll people. Then I start to understand rock and roll history. And then I start to meet those legendary rock and roll people. Then I find that mentality also doesn't fit me. Then I switched to jazz. Then I met Ornette Coleman. He really opened the door for me. He doesn't even talk about music. He told me that music, this word is too old. Sound. I remember he said, hey girl, we don't talk about music anymore. We talk about sound. You remember this word, sound. I think that's very important for artists. You do what you do every day. That's already who you are. It's what you do well, and then you do seriously, and you care about all the details, and then you think about what you do. That's already, you've done a lot. You don't need to think about a big title and a big thing and I don't think about big picture.
But think about this a lot. Back in the 1980s, you were this big name among the younger generation of Chinese. And of course, your fields of art has developed so much in different areas. But now people look at you, they would rather describe you as an avant-garde artist, as an outlier. How do you like that?
I don't care. Whatever you describe me, I don't care. In your lifetime, there's always lots of opportunities open to you. You choose your position, it's your decision. One step you choose wrong, and you go to a wrong way. That's what I know. I knew this when I was young. There's something there can encourage you to be very ambitious. I saw that as a danger. I would refuse. I don't go, I don't go for ambitions. I go for detail.
Very interesting. I like that. Everything you said, I love that. But when you think about it, the further you walk away from the so-called mainstream, the further you, quote unquote, don't care, the fewer companion you could have, possibly. So I guess it has a lot to do with, you're waving your head.
No. Let's say I sometimes really feel very surprised. I have so many friends. Like the other day, this exhibition in Tokyo Gallery, you heard. There's so many artists showed and then show their support, and they all accepted this live broadcast interview.
Which is not easy for artists usually.
So many artists, they all talked very enthusiastically about it. Actually, it's not about me. They all talk about the idea, their idea of art. I think they all looking for something happen to use this chance to talk about their own idea. There's most of the people, what I feel, actually, the most artists just, most artists are outside. And even some of you think they're inside, they're actually outside.
But you really think about it, if we talk about rock and roll, this music has become such a commercialized genre these days.
So
you see these festivals everywhere.
Now it's not can't be a part of the art scene.
Yeah, and secondly, if you think about jazz, it is also becoming quite commercial. You see, jazz festivals, different kinds.
Traditional jazz, but the free jazz is a part of art. Yeah.
Right. And you think about the other areas that you've been working on, even Chinese contemporary art. It is also very commercialized these days on the international stage, particularly.
But only a few. People always look at that a few. A few made a big fortune, big success, big money, and you think everybody like that. It's not. I don't call it a struggle. People always think if artists don't make enough, they call it a struggle. It's not. I don't look at, you have less money, you struggle. You don't struggle. And we are happy because there's so many people in the world, most of artists, they just happily do what they do.
You're happy about what these days?
I'm just happy about everything. Like people think, you still work and you still work so hard. They kind of sympathize with me. Yeah, people just like to retire early, talk about either big success or big money or happy, easy life. Don't work.
But that's not you.
No, I don't see myself doing that. I see myself will be working my music all my life. And when I take my musicians tour and travel, people said, God, are you happy about this? I said, I'm so happy. As soon as I see them, I'm happy. The idea of art in China, this moment, because by accident, a few artists made a big name and big money. And then we have this very kind of a rough idea, like a
stereotypes.
Also blurb idea about the world, about the international world. They think everybody should live like if you do film, you should live like a Hollywood film stars. Or you do art, you should be the celebrity for artists. You don't know there's so many happy artists. They just happy about what they do. When I was in England, there's a Baroque music movement. Baroque music movement, I think probably started at the 60s, 70s. It's early music style. There are many musicians involved with Baroque music style, not because you make money, because you like it. Because you're bored with a very conservative, not conservative, ordinary orchestra style, like a romantic music style. They want to go back to early music style, so that's why they switched to Baroque music. And then like about 90s, and the Baroque music become very popular, mainstream again. So then I saw some Baroque musicians actually quit their job. I asked them, I said, now you try so hard to be Baroque musician. After a long time now, this job become you can make easy money, and you become mainstream. And they quit. Some just quit, said too commercial, we don't want to do it. So it's actually really inspiring. Like you see lots of musicians, they just like to be in their hometown doing something they like, or they go to do church music, they go to church to do concert. They don't have ambitions, we have to perform in metropolitan, this doesn't have this concept.
So as artists, you don't like ambitions?
I think ambition make you very unhappy. I saw some especially for like some Chinese musicians, they really feel if you don't achieve this big goal, like become the top in the world, then you basically shit. That's for maybe the education in China, like the competition.
You're either the winner or the loser.
Yeah, you should die if you lose. There's so many, some of my friends really have influence of that. I feel that I see their life ruined. Yeah, so I saw their life, like journey. I saw how they've been ruined by ambitions. So that's why, and also I learned from really the majority artists from the whole world. They live happily. They know how to live happily.
I want to ask you about the free spirit.
Yes, yeah.
Because that's, in fact, one of the very few adjectives that come to my mind when I think about an interview with you. How could one individual at any time of her life always striving for free spirit, whether she is quote-unquote traditional sense successful or she's quote-unquote traditional sense silent? How could that happen?
Free spirit is something here, I don't say you refuse successful and you don't refuse success, but even when you're in the middle of success, you can still keep your freedom, your free spirit. You can anytime, anytime you can say no. I think it's not about yours, like if you're already in the circle, the successful circle. This is the trick. And then people give you the chance to say, now you're in this very important position, you can't say no. Most people don't dare to say, oh God, I worked so hard in my life. I'm finally here. If I say no, everything gone. But once, if you force yourself to say yes, then you're going to be forced all your life. If you can say, anytime I can say no, and there's always a door open for you. Offer me, asking me, do you want to perform in the stadium with your ensemble? I said, no, it's too big.
It's not good for the long run.
No, it's like too tiring. It's too much hassle.
So this is interesting, Sola. I mean, on the one hand, you're always working. You're always working for something you believe is important to you, to your art. On the other hand, you don't like to be quote-unquote tired and exhausted.
I
just
don't want
to please
be tricked.
The other. Can many afford this kind of free spirit as you do in China? I mean, after all, people will say, you're coming from a very special family. You yourself went to the United States very early in your years. You saw a lot of things. You come back, you're materially affluent, and therefore you can do anything that you want. And you got your friends who admire you because of what you have done. throughout the years. So you seem to have everything and you can say, oh, I'm free-spirited, while the others probably couldn't afford that.
Anything good is a sacrifice to get it. You have to pay the sacrifice. I paid lots of sacrifice. I learned my lessons. So it's a hard decision. You know, then how to learn, because then I have lots of friends overseas. I meet friends, some friends like, so either they very successful or really not successful but brilliant. I really value to learn from those musicians, or not artists, artists, musicians, whatever people. Yeah, they teach me, they told me so many things. You know, like even the most successful artists in the States, they told me how to keep free spirit. That's one thing I learned from everybody.
Talking about the free spirit, once again, you see the Chinese society changes. Yeah. A lot of amazing things happen, but a lot of things remain the same. Yeah. How do you, as an artist, at the very beginning until today, try to be conscious about everything going on there? Yeah. But at the same time, readjust yourself to be able to get your voice heard and to be able to keep your friends around.
From my own experience, I feel there's lots of things happens without knowing. If you try too hard, actually, it ruins your spirit. It ruins your whole life. Eventually, even you may get it, when you got it, you probably can't even enjoy it. You know, because you lose too much because of that purpose. But if you do things, you may get something, and then everything happened, you appreciate. That's what I feel. To work hard, just keep doing it. Look at the details, what you do. Just look at this much.
This much eventually will become that much.
Maybe.
Sometimes.
But even if it doesn't become big, you look at this much,
and you enjoy it.
You'll really find that more and more you enjoy things.
Do you think you're typical of Chinese female artists, or very, very different from most of the mainstream?
I don't know. I don't think about this.
Do you care?
I don't care.
I like it. I just like it. Sola, a free-spirited Sola, inside out. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All the best.
Okay.
Liu Sola, absolutely a fun person to be with, a free-spirited woman from China. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Inside CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Inside team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.